So, my dad is a professor at a university in Canada, and he received a very strange email from one of his students. He showed it to me, and we laughed about it, but things quickly got weird when we found out the student had gone missing. My dad brought it to the authorities, and they told him that others received the same email. It's currently an open case, and I'm not even sure I'm allowed to share this, but it's really creepy. Hope they find him. I hope this isn't real. We called it the Happy Birthday Hell Spawn. 2. Redacted. From Redacted. Subject: I'm afraid. If you're reading this, know that I'm afraid. I have no one to turn to. All I can do is try and explain the fear that has haunted me every year since I was born. I see no point in protecting this family secret as I have since been deserted by them. I'm alone this time around, and I'm afraid that I won't make it out alive. For most of my life, you could say I had a pretty regular upbringing. I was raised by loving parents, encouraged to get good grades in school, got grounded if I fell out of line, and being the youngest of 3, was always pushed around by my older brother and sister. In many ways, I was like every other kid. My family made it especially important that I feel that way, but by no means did we live an ordinary life. You see, like everyone else, I had a birthday, only it wasn't what others would consider a celebration. The earliest memory I have of a birthday is on the eve of my 4th. I remember driving for hours through the country roads with my family up to a lonely cabin in the middle of nowhere. Upon arriving, my father took me into a room in the basement with my sister, who was 7 at the time. He left us there with a couple of toys and told us to sit quietly and play no matter what we heard upstairs. Now, early memories are a strange thing. As a child, you don't really know what you actually recall. And what's your imagination? I always struggled with one particular detail of that night as I grew up. It wasn't the fact that my sister and I were locked in what seemed to be a fortified room. It was the fact that my parents and my brother, who was 10 at the time, were brandishing weapons. At that age, I convinced myself it must have been in my head, but as I got older that illusion dissipated. That morning, I remember me and my sister being blindfolded out of the cabin before being loaded into the car. The ride home was strangely quiet. My parents were exhausted and beat, and I'll never forget the look on my brother's face. He was never the same after that day. After that night, things went back to normal. As I entered preschool, that year, like most kids, I attended a string of birthday parties for my classmates, all of which included cake, presents, piñatas, and goodie bags. A very big contrast to what I experienced on the anniversary of my birth and of my siblings. I was a pretty observant kid. I quickly realized that something was off as I got older. When I asked my mother for a birthday party like that of my friends, she dismissed the idea and told me one day I'd understand. The following birthdays were almost exactly the same, only it seemed my family was doing a better job at hiding whatever it was I thought I saw on that previous birthday, perhaps realizing that I started retaining information at that age. The basement I previously remembered as fortified was now full of color and looked like a playroom with 8 different types of locks on the door. Given the evidence, I always assumed that my family was having an adult gathering in the cabin upstairs, a celebration too mature for me and my sister. The sounds I would hear creak through the ceiling gave the impression of loud and rowdy behavior. I remember listening to the commotion and wondering what could be going on. I'd imagined that the echoing bangs from outside the basement walls were fireworks, the loud screams belonging to the excited extended family I never met. My young and arrogant self fantasized that it was a celebration in my honor. On my 7th birthday, like usual, my father brought me down to the basement, only this time I was alone. My sister, having turned 10 that year, was finally old enough to take part in the celebration, I presumed. On the ride home that morning, something changed in my sister. The look on her face was similar to my brother's on that morning after my 4th birthday. She too was never the same. I always wondered what changed. My siblings almost resented me, ignoring me and keeping their distance. Even despite all the tense silences, they were very protective of me, and I didn't know why. Sometime during that year, as I waited for my siblings at the bus stop after school, something strange happened. An old lady stood a foot away from me, looking through my soul, with her piercing eyes that seemed almost pitch black. The way her skin wrapped around her bones was unusual. She murmured some words under her breath before a creepy smile spanned across her face. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shaken. When my brother arrived, he pulled me behind his back as my sister defensively stood up to the old lady with her own piercing gaze. They didn't say a word to her, but as my brother pulled me away, I looked back at the old lady and read her lips. I'll be seeing you soon. I don't want to paint the picture that my family and I didn't have any great times or fun memories, because we did. However, the closer we got to my birthday, I'd always feel a sense of tense uncertainty around the dinner table. I knew something was going on. My father would take my brother and sister somewhere for hours, while my mom and I stayed home. I was being kept in the dark about something, that much I knew. It wasn't until a couple of months before my 10th birthday that I realized I'd soon come face to face with the truth. After all, turning 10 seemed to be what got you out of the cabin basement. 3 months before I turned 10, my mother and father sat me down at the table to finally reveal the truth. Since the day they told me, I feel like I haven't woken up from one long nightmare. This is where you might think what I'm writing is something made up, but I assure you it is not. Please, don't stop reading. I need someone to understand. I don't know the specifics as my parents only told me what I needed to know. But before they immigrated to Canada from Redacted, they were unable to conceive and were desperate to have children. So, they went to a woman who dealt in black magic and she somehow made it happen. And that's when my brother was born, after my sister was born, and my mother was pregnant with me. My parents decided to move to Canada to give us a shot at a better life. Again, I'm not too sure about the details, but something happened between the deal my parents had with the woman that led to her cursing them. The next words out of my parents' mouths changed my life forever. The curse was on their youngest child, that they be returned to the entity that gave them the ability to conceive. It was this revelation that made everything make sense. I know what I'm about to say may sound ridiculous to whoever reads this, but this is not a joke. Every year on the anniversary of my birth, something evil comes for me. It has a name, but it should never be repeated. It's not from this world. It's not human. From midnight to dead hour, it comes after me relentlessly. Since I was a child, my parents have protected me from it. And when my siblings became old enough to fight, they too protected me from it. That 10th year of my existence was the first time I'd face it with my family. Everything made sense after that talk. I revisited those memories of being locked in the basement, all the shaking and rattling of the cabin, the booming sounds of fireworks, and the loud shouts and screams. They were never the celebration I imagined them to be. It was my family defending me from the clutches of the beast I'd soon come to know. I finally understood the looming uncertainty, fear, and anxiousness that came over my family as my birthday approached, knowing that the days were bringing us closer and closer to a horrifying task, face to face with something insidious and evil. I knew now why my brother and sister resented me. They were children and they were forced to face the Boogeyman in order to protect their little brother. I found out the mysterious trips my father would take my siblings on were to a gun range he made close to the cabin. I joined them a few weeks before my birthday. I'd never held a rifle before. My father made sure I could at least shoot straight. He never said much while he taught us how to reload a rifle and aim down its sights. But on the last day at the gun range, he told me something I'd never forget. It can be stopped, but it cannot be killed. Every time you put it down, it will come back stronger. One night of bravery and strength for a year of life, amongst the shared fear of his children. He smiled. He could see the fear in our eyes. His children standing there with rifles taller than them. It made him laugh for a moment. I miss him dearly. The first time I was to face the creature, my parents considered putting me back in the basement to keep me safe. I told them I'd only be more afraid, being alone knowing something was after me. For the first time in my life, I experienced what it was like to not be locked away in the cabin basement. We would unload the car of the rifles and ammunition, fortify the windows, set traps around the perimeter of the cabin, and after sunset, sit down for a family dinner. I was too afraid to have an appetite, shaking in my chair. Out of the silence, my brother laughed, and then my mother, and then my sister and father. They had faced this creature for years. But for me, it was the first time. Midnight approached. Outside the cabin was an ocean of darkness, nothing but trees for miles. We sat in silence watching the flames flicker in the fireplace. I asked the question that had been haunting me since I first learned the truth. What happens if it takes me? My family assured me it wouldn't happen. But that wasn't an answer. A distant scream came from outside as soon as the clock hit midnight. I froze. All I could do was hide in the corner with the rifle in my hands. My father shouted orders to my siblings and my mother, and just like that, I saw it through the window running on its arms and legs like a dog towards us. It looked human, but the way it moved was anything but. Pale skin and protruding bones. It hit a trap before I could see its face. It screeched in pain, fighting off the bear trap around its leg. My father went out and put it down. Then another scream, this time on the other side of the cabin. My father ran back in. Every member of my family had a window covered. I was the only one cowardly crying on the floor. I couldn't believe it was all real. For hours the creature attacked, coming out of the ground after every previous version of it was put down, bullet after bullet. A few hours in, it was silent. I went over to the window, and that's when it grabbed me. It pounced through the window and pulled me by the leg so fast that I hit my head off the ground. To my surprise, I woke up in the hospital the next day. I watched as my parents flawlessly lied to the nurse about the biking accident that gave me a concussion. At that moment, I truly convinced myself that it had all been a dream. My parents were disappointed. They managed to kill the creature before it could drag me away, but it was too close of a call. For the rest of that year, my father took me to the gun range every weekend. As my 11th birthday approached, they decided that it was too risky to have me fight alongside them. So, back to the basement I went, only this time medicated so that I could sleep through the night and hope I didn't wake up in the clutches of the being that hunted me. I would always ask about the creature, what it was, where it came from. All I knew was that it wasn't from this world. I found out that it could take the form of others so that it could get close to me during the year, but only during those 4 hours on my birthday. From midnight to dead hour could it actually come for me. This is one of the reasons my parents built a cabin miles away from any population. It would only be us against the creature with no one else around to get hurt or in the way. The second time I faced the creature was on my 16th birthday. I was no longer a whimpering coward. I convinced my parents that I could stand my own ground, fight my own battle. So I did. It didn't look the way it did before. The creature changed. It was bigger, stronger, didn't go down easy. We never let it get as close as it did that first time around. We changed our strategy and our weapons, but every year it learned and adapted. The cabin deteriorated with every passing year. We did our best to fix it up, but the damages were becoming more significant. I'd see it in my nightmares, the creature calling me, the excruciating pain that came at its hands, the darkness of the place it would drag me to. I would see people throughout the year staring at me in the distance, their skin hanging off their bones, just human enough to not call attention. I knew it was the creature. I became used to it. As I got older, I could feel it wanted me more. It kept getting closer and closer every time we fought it. 2 years ago, my father died of prostate cancer. 4 months before my birthday, he died surrounded by all of us, made each of them promise to protect me. I hated that, but I did need them. That year we fought the creature, only the 4 of us. It got close enough to where I could look into its dead, pale eyes. Since my father passed, my mother's mental health has deteriorated. My brother started a family and told me he could no longer be there to protect me. Last year, it was only my sister and I that drove up to the cabin. That was the longest night of our lives. It took everything we had to keep the creature away, and even then, it got close enough to claw her. I took her to the hospital the morning after and told the doctors we were hiking in the woods when an animal attacked. He believed us. I sat beside her as she recovered. When she woke up, she told me that she couldn't do it anymore. She wanted to travel and live in new places, eventually settle down and start a family. I understood. I was afraid, but I reassured her that I'd be fine on my own. I could see the guilt in her eyes as she betrayed the promise she made to my father, a sense of guilt that was missing from my brother's eyes when he told me he could no longer help. I hate myself for what I've done to my family. This curse that follows me has brought nothing but pain and fear to them. I want this to end, but I don't know how to make it stop. I'm so angry at my brother and sister for deserting me, but I don't blame them. I visit my mom from time to time to see how she's doing. My brother won't speak to me. My sister hardly answers my calls. I'm too afraid to make friends or find a partner cause I don't want to drag them into this. I write this as I sit alone in the cabin. It's my birthday in a few hours. I'm turning 21 and I'm afraid. I don't know if I'll make it out alive this time. For the last few weeks, my nightmares have kept me from sleeping. A part of me doesn't want to fight it anymore, but I fear that my fate would be much worse if I let it take me. I don't know if I'll be a match for it, facing it on my own. I wish I could be certain that I'll be around tomorrow, but I'm not. This is why I'm writing to you. If you don't hear from me again, the cabin's location is redacted. Stay on the dirt road, clear of the traps. If I live to see another day, I'll be returning to Redacted to find the woman responsible for this curse and put an end to all this. Wish me luck. Redacted. Update number 1. Please note that I am sharing the email the student sent to my father, who was his professor. He cannot see these comments as he is missing. We got an update on the police investigation. They're heading out to the address of the cabin to search for him. We'll keep everyone posted. I hope for the sake of my sanity that they find him and this whole email he wrote up was just a joke. Update number 2. We woke up to some chilling news. This morning the police told my dad that they found the location of the cabin, but unfortunately it was in ruins, engulfed in flames. The fire department was dispatched to put out the raging fire. The officer said they're still working on putting it out as the flames managed to spread to the surrounding woods. There's still a chance this could all be a joke, right? We'll keep you all updated once they put out the flames and search the cabin. God, please let this email not be true.